4 different children went missing within the span of just a few weeks in January of 2026, with every story potentially pointing back to the same thing. They met strangers on Roblox. And while 3 of these children were eventually found safe, the 4th and most recent case is still unresolved, which is the main reason I'm making this video, in the hope that more information gets out there so these cases receive more attention. And with that being said, I'll lay out everything that's publicly available in case anyone has any details, no matter how small they may seem, that could actually help move things forward. And I'll make sure the appropriate contact information is both on screen and down in the description down below. But the first story that grabbed national attention started on a Monday morning in Southwest Philadelphia. James Cartwright, who is 18 years old, walked out of his house around 7 in the morning on January 12th, supposedly heading to Hardy Williams High School like he did every other weekday. Except this time, he never showed up. His mom figured something was off when the school day had ended and she hadn't heard from him. And when she reached out to the school, they confirmed that he never made it to class that day. So that's when she filed a missing person report and things started getting really weird. So the next day, roughly 24 hours after he disappeared, his friends managed to track his phone through the iCloud, and his location pinged in San Diego, California. Yes, the teenager was just in Philly, but now the next day it's pinging in California. Well, that's not on the way to school. That's on the other side of the country. This guy left for school, then crossed the whole map. But here's the part that makes even less sense, because James didn't have any form of ID on him. He had no money or income, and according to his family, he had never traveled outside of Philadelphia in his entire life. So how did an 18-year-old with no resources somehow end up across the country in less than a day? Well, the most plausible way would have been by plane. But again, he had no ID. But the Black and Missing Foundation, which is a nonprofit that specifically focuses on finding missing people of color, got involved pretty quickly, and they mentioned that the evidence was pointing towards that James potentially was in contact with an older person through Roblox. Now, it is worth mentioning here that even though that James is 18 years old, he's still a high schooler, and his family has stated that he has an intellectual disability, which meant that he could be more vulnerable to someone trying to manipulate or take advantage of him online. But the foundation suggests that he might have been lured through a platform, but at that point, nobody had actually confirmed that. It was simply the most likely explanation based on the evidence they had. So, I mean, my question then is, did they somehow sneak him onto some sort of like cargo plane? Or did they sneak him onto like a private chartered plane? Like, how did they get him to California within one day? And then the other thing is like, why would his phone still be on him if this was a kidnapping? This one's really confusing. But for at least 3 days, James's family and community members were scrambling to piece together where he might be and who he could be with as the weight of the situation really set in. Then, around January 16th and 17th, the family announced that James had actually been found in California, and that most importantly, he was safe. His mom put out a statement thanking everyone who helped search for him, and also mentioned that they were still working with the police to understand what went down during his disappearance. So currently, there's a lot of unanswered questions right there. But while James's story is unfolding, something uncanny similar was happening thousands of miles away in Mexico. Because on January 9th, 3 days before James disappeared, 2 sisters named Sabrina and Mary walked out of their house in Neza, state of Mexico, and never came back. Sabrina was 10 years old, while Mary was 16. And based on security camera footage from neighbors, they left early in the morning, carrying backpacks with clothes, their cell phones, and their savings and cash. When their parents realized they were gone and tried calling them, both of their phones were turned off, which immediately set off the alarm bells. The family then reported them missing, and during the investigation, one detail kept coming up. Both girls had been spending a whole bunch of time playing online games, specifically Roblox and Free Fire. I hadn't heard about Free Fire until now, but it's kind of like a PUBG knockoff that's very popular amongst kids in South America. Their parents had assumed that they'd been playing with friends or people they knew, but authorities started digging deeper, and they started looking into whether someone they met online convinced them to leave. But on top of that, there was apparently some family drama right before they disappeared. So one day earlier, Mary had gotten a tattoo on her leg, and that's when her parents found out. They had a conversation about it, and suddenly she was gone the next day. But the parents insisted that it wasn't like a huge blow up or anything. According to Mary's mom, she told her daughter not to worry and just come home, trying to make it clear that she wasn't in trouble. But obviously, when 2 kids disappeared the next day, people start trying to connect the dots. Mexican authorities started following leads, and their cyber unit started picking up some information that pointed them towards Campeche, which, just like in the first case, means that the missing kids are on the other side of the country. So police in Campeche checked out an address connected to the case, but when they got there, the sisters were already gone. Eventually, after almost a full week of searching, authorities finally got a tip from a family member that tied them to a massive inner-city bus terminal in Mexico City. And that's where they found both girls. And they were with a man who had allegedly been talking to them online. And based on where they were and what they were doing, it looked like the three of them were about to get onto another bus and keep traveling. Thankfully though, the girls were taken into protective custody, given medical attention, and eventually reunited with their parents. But the authorities said based on everything they gathered, it seemed like the girls had left voluntarily, which doesn't necessarily mean they understood what they were actually getting into here or that they weren't being manipulated. And reports suggest that whoever contacted them started the conversation on Roblox and then moved it over to other platforms like Discord or WhatsApp, which is apparently a pretty common pattern with this kind of thing. And Mexican authorities used this case to push for better parental monitoring of kids' online activity, recommending that parents turn off chat features when possible and keeping gaming devices in common areas instead of their bedrooms, and having real conversations with their kids about the dangers of sharing personal information online with strangers. But I mean, stuff like this just hits home. I was absolutely raised on the internet, and my English is as good and bad as it is at the same time, because I was raised on the internet. I was raised in a small town in Norway. I moved there from the States when I was 7. And to put it lightly, Norwegian winters are very cold and very dark. You know, because you just don't have too much time with the sun up north during the winters. But then you have the opposite during the summers. So it all balances out, I guess. But Norway was fairly early to give the population access to affordable high-speed internet. So I spent a lot of time playing video games, especially in the winters growing up. And I've met some of my best friends online. Literally, people who were once complete strangers, I met questing in the same area on World of Warcraft or on a Counter-Strike Source server. I even have a close friend who I randomly encountered while playing Arma 2 Wasteland. Like literally just over like voice comms. He was close to me and we started joking around, and then we were like, hey, let's get into TeamSpeak. And then we just started talking from there, and we still talk to this day. And way later, I've met so many of these people in person, and thankfully, they were kids my age, at least at the time that we met. And, you know, now we're old. We were young once, but now I can't really say I'm old. You know, I'm in my late 20s. I'm 28. But I feel like a lot of people in my generation can relate to, you know, being a teenager and talking to people you don't know in person online. So maybe there's some survivor bias here, but obviously I don't know the answers. I'm still trying to figure out this big massive lesson that we call life. But I don't think it's that good to try to isolate your child in the attempt of protecting them. Because I would think one of the best things you can do to protect your child is to invest your time in them, where you actually focus on hearing them out and, you know, you make sure that it's a safe space for guidance and mentorship. Because if you have a great relationship with your kid, there's a higher chance that they'll actually talk to you about what's going on in their life, who they're trying to meet up with, who they're talking to, and what their plans are. But it's tricky because I guess you just have to balance on the fine line between wanting your kid to be as social as possible with others through their passions and them not getting trafficked across the country. Good luck, all my parents out there. We just have to try our best. Because one thing I thought of now that I feel like we kind of scathed, at least the people in my generation. The younger kids now have to start worrying about this. Because in like 2012, when I was using Ventrilo, TeamSpeak, and Skype, I could hear the people I was talking to, and I could hear that they were somewhat around my age because, you know, we were just a bunch of squeakers back then. Now, in theory, you could have some sicko use AI to appear on camera as a kid. The future is definitely going to be one massive landmine. But moving on to the third case. This one stands apart from the others, as it still, unfortunately, does not have a resolution. And because of that, it's especially important to focus on this point. Because on the same day the sisters disappeared in Mexico on January 9th, a 15-year-old kid named Thomas Medlin left Stony Brook School on Long Island around 3:30 in the afternoon. But instead of heading home like usual, people saw him running towards the Stony Brook train station, and he apparently caught a train to Manhattan. Surveillance cameras caught him at Grand Central Station a couple hours later, around 5:30 in the evening. And through video footage and cell phone data, police were able to trace Thomas's path through the city, and they determined that his last known location was on the pedestrian walkway of the Manhattan Bridge at around 7:09 that night. And the Manhattan Bridge connects Lower Manhattan to Brooklyn and crosses over the East River. But at 7:09, 3 minutes after he was spotted on the bridge, Thomas's phone went dark. And then at 7:10, a surveillance camera near the bridge recorded what looked to be a splash of water. But according to police, Thomas was never seen walking on that bridge through any of the pedestrian exits. So Thomas's mom, Eva Yan, told reporters that she believed her son had gone into the city to meet someone he connected with through Roblox. Though she also said this was completely unlike him and that he's never just up and left like that before. His dad also said the same thing, that he couldn't understand why Thomas would do something like this. But the family organized search parties, checked homeless shelters, reached out to anyone who might have any information, especially as the brutal winter weather started hitting New York. Because obviously the Northeast has been hit with back-to-back blizzards since then. But then, police released an update that changed the whole story. After getting court orders and search warrants for Thomas's social media, gaming profiles, and electronic devices, investigators did a full forensic examination of everything, and according to Suffolk County Police Department, they found no evidence that any online platform, including Roblox, was connected to the disappearance. Also stating there was no indication of criminal activity, and that the police said they've been keeping Thomas's family informed on their findings and that they were continuing to work with other law enforcement agencies to try to bring some kind of closure. And as a part of that effort, they also shared Thomas's physical description in hope that it would help someone recognize him. So, he's 15 years old, from St. James, Long Island, New York. He's about 5'4", roughly 130 pounds, and wears glasses. He was last seen wearing a black jacket with red stripes, dark sweatpants with white stripes, and carrying a black backpack. So if anyone watching this has any information about Thomas, no matter how small it may seem, please reach out to authorities through Suffolk County's Police Force Squad detectives at 631-854-8452, or obviously call 911. Roblox itself did actually release official statements regarding both James Cartwright's case and the Thomas Medlin one. And while wording differs, the overall approach is similar. In Thomas's case, Roblox released a detailed statement saying they were deeply concerned and that their thoughts are with him and his family. According to the company, they immediately launched an internal review, searched for any prior law enforcement inquiries, and reached out to authorities to offer support. After reviewing the account, they stated they found no attempts to move communication off the platform, no sharing of personal contact information, no unusual chat activity beyond normal in-game conversations, and no indication that voice chat had been used. And as everyone probably already knows, Roblox is an enormous platform. It has well over 100,000 active users worldwide. However, a huge amount of them, roughly 56% of them, are under the age of 18. It does have safety systems in-game, but the underlying issue is, as long as the platform allows open communication between users, there's always going to be some level of risk. And in many cases, those interactions don't just stay on one game itself, as they can easily move off the platform. My understanding here, though, is Roblox is unfortunately just a platform here. It's not the game's fault. So it's kind of like if Roblox magically shut down tomorrow, the predators would just move on to any other platform. The positive here is that James Cartwright was found safe and Sabrina and Mary were also located, and it's normal for investigations like this to continue. So as authorities still need time to review all the circumstances and rule out any additional concerns. So again, if you have any information related to any of these three cases, please consider reaching out directly to the appropriate authorities. For the James Cartwright case, you can share tips right here. For the Sabrina and Mary case, anyone with relevant information can contact local authorities only in Mexico by calling 911, which connects directly to the police services in the area where the case took place. And for Thomas Medlin, if you have any information, please contact the Suffolk County Police Force Squad detectives at 631-854-8452, or obviously call 911 if you need to. Currently, there's so much misinformation about that last case, like AI images like this one, which honestly is just heartbreaking to see people willingly spread fake information about a missing kid for what, internet engagement? But the most recent post for the family was posted by Chris Hansen, where you can see it here. But other than that, again, all the contact information is in the description down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.